Thank you, Sherry, and thanks to everybody who came out here this afternoon. My presentation today is called Government Documents, Making Government Work for You. And by making government work for you, I don't mean calling up Vice President Biden and asking him to wash your car, although I'm sure he'd be happy to do that. I'm actually talking about using the documents that are created in the course of government. If you're a student, they could be used for your research. If you're faculty, they could be used in your classroom for various projects. And for the librarians who are here, I just hope this presentation today will serve as a helpful reminder of what we have here in the Forsyth Library and what we're able to access online in terms of government information. So why have a government information, why have a government documents collection in the first place? The reasoning behind it is akin, I believe, to the reasoning behind the American Revolution itself. Patrick Henry at the Virginia Ratifying Convention of June 9th, 1788, stated it thusly: "The liberties of the people never were, nor ever will be secure, when the transactions of their rulers may be concealed from them." In other words, a democracy cannot function without transparency. We need to know what's going on in our government, and it's up to us, the citizens of a democracy, to be aware of what our government is doing and to hold our officials, both elected and unelected, accountable for their actions. This is where the Federal Depository Library Program comes in. This is an impressive program which designates various libraries across the United States and its territories as official depositories of United States government documents. This includes academic libraries like the one we're in now, Forsyth Library, as well as public libraries, state libraries, the libraries of Supreme Courts and Courts of Appeals of states and federal, among many different kinds of libraries can be designated as FDLP libraries. The program is administered by the United States Government Publishing Office, which until very recently, just until December of 2014, was known as the Government Printing Office. The image that you see on this slide is the logo of the FDLP, the Federal Depository Library Program. And in any library where you see this logo displayed near the entrance, you know that that library is a part of the FDLP program. And it's a program that's codified, a program that's part of the law through the United States Code. Specifically, for those of you legal buffs, that's Title 44 USC Sections 1901 through 1916. There'll be a quiz at the end. FDLP libraries are actually, through the law, they're legally required as a kind of public service to provide access to members of the general public. So even if you have a private institution that also has a FDLP government documents section, they're still required to allow people in who might not normally have access to other parts of the library, though they're required to be let in to use the government documents section. That's the law. So I already mentioned that the FDLP is administered by the Government Publishing Office. To give you some idea of the scale of this and how really amazing of a program it is, the United States government is actually by far the largest publisher in the world. And the Government Publishing Office handles pretty much all of the publishing duties of the United States government. Anything that, basically, anything published by the GPO that's not classified or something that couldn't otherwise be sent out for public consumption will likely end up eventually in a government documents collection. And again, to give you a little bit of an idea of scale, on that forklift there, that's a picture from inside the GPO. It's pictures of tickets being printed for the second Obama inauguration. And that's just a few of them. In fact, actually just 2 days ago, the Government Publishing Office had its 154th birthday, which was March 4th, 1861. Unfortunately for the GPO at the time, there was another event that overshadowed its founding on March 4th, 1861. Can anybody tell me what that was?
The Civil War.
You're on the right track, and it was in the middle of the Civil War, but I'm specifically on March 4th, if anybody would know that.
Lincoln's inauguration.
That's correct. Yep. The first inauguration of President Lincoln. They used to inaugurate presidents on March 4th because it took longer to get to Washington, D.C. from wherever you happen to be.
Muddy roads.
Yep. But yeah, it was on the exact same day that Lincoln was first inaugurated, the GPO was founded. The Government Publishing Office sends government documents to various depository libraries. It's been sending them here to Fort Hays State University since 1926, when Forsyth officially became a depository library. It was designated as a depository by our U.S. representative at the time, Hayes B. White. Nice coincidence, his first name was actually Hayes, the U.S. representative from Kansas. And actually, I was able to find in our filing cabinet upstairs, it was a copy, but I scanned the letter from the Superintendent of Documents in 1926 congratulating us on our choice to uphold and take the responsibilities of becoming a depository library. One thing that's unique about government documents organized in FDLP's libraries is that they're organized differently than a lot of other library materials. It's not the Dewey Decimal System, which a lot of people are familiar with, the system of organization you find most often in public libraries and school libraries. It's not even Library of Congress classification, which has become the standard for most academic libraries, but it's Superintendent of Documents classification, which we commonly abbreviate as SUDOCs, which is an idea conceived by Adelaide Arhasa, who was a librarian at the Los Angeles Public Library in the 1890s. And the way that SUDOCs classification works is that the documents are organized by their creating agency rather than by any kind of coding. I mean, there still is a code there, but it's related to the creating agency that originally wrote or otherwise created the document. I have a couple of examples up here. I don't know if that's large enough to read, but for the most part, they're actually pretty intuitive. For example, documents that were created by the Department of Agriculture start with A. Ones created by the Department of Defense would be D. And ones by the Government Accountability Office start with GA. Although this is just the overarching agency, so there's sometimes you would have to know if it's a smaller sub-agency or bureau, you'd have to know what they belong to. So for example, you might not expect that the United States Forest Service is a part of the Department of Agriculture, or that the U.S. Census Bureau is part of the Department of Commerce. So these are the kinds of things where if you don't know, you should ask a librarian, help you find your way. So I've been talking a little bit about the history of FDLP libraries and how the materials are organized in FDLP libraries, but what kinds of stuff do we have to offer? The short answer is there's a lot of stuff. Part of the reason, actually, that the GPO just recently changed its name from Government Printing Office to Government Publishing Office was because almost everything that they're putting out now is being put out born digital materials. So they're not just printing, they're publishing. They turn out materials in electronic print. We still even get microform, we get CD-ROM even, regular compact discs and DVDs. And there's still, however, they, like many libraries, have been moving towards publishing materials primarily electronically. There's some that they publish in a variety of formats just simply due to their importance, and they don't want there to be any kind of impediment to people accessing them due to just simply not being used to a format. So a couple of examples of materials like that they try to have in multiple formats are the budget of the United States government, the U.S. Census, Code of Federal Regulations, the Congressional Record, Federal Register, the Occupational Outlook Handbook, and so on. And I'm actually going to pass around the budget of the United States. I thought that this was an excellent illustration to see how hefty it is. This was the recently passed 2016 budget of the United States government. It has one page that kind of just has the overall explanation, has an appendix, which is most of the numbers, and then it has, I think it was an analytical record was the other section. Quite impressive, to say the least. One of the most popular uses of FDLP collections is to keep track of what our elected officials are doing and what's currently going on in the government, and particularly in the legislature, because that's where laws are first created. So I'm going to go live now and show you a couple of ways that you can check this out, that you can see what's going on in Congress. So first we're going to take a look at the official website of Congress, which is congress.gov. And for those of you who are familiar with legal research, congress.gov has actually superseded thomas.gov, which has been around for quite a while. There's still a legacy version of Thomas available through the Library of Congress, but this is where you want to go now to see current legislation. And so you can search for legislation, current or all includes previous. You can search the congressional record for things people have said, committee reports, and so on. Go into that a little bit later. One thing that I think is useful is that you can look at the top 10 most viewed bills. That's usually if you have, maybe if a student's coming in and is looking for, you know, what's been going on in Congress lately, what's being covered in the news, you'll likely find that somewhere in here. So you can take a look, for example, at H.R. 240. H.R. means that it's from the House of Representatives. The Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Act. Now, as you can see right here, this banner here means that it's become a law. It has a little, I guess this is like kind of equivalent to the abstract of an academic article, but it was, the sponsor was Representative Harold Rogers, a Republican from Kentucky. It originally came from the House Appropriations Committee and the Budget Committee, and the latest action was on March 4th when it was signed by the President and therefore became a law. But you can see basically what's behind every law, even laws or even bills. They include bills that don't become laws on here. And see all that happens. So by clicking through these various tabs, you see the summary here. It talks about how basically this is the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Act. It agrees to continue funding this federal department until September 30th, 2015. Okay. You can see the full text of the bill, which here they have in HTML. It can also be downloaded as a PDF. And if you ever take a look back at some older bills, you'll see that they've always had this sort of format. And as far as I know, it seems like it's never changed. You can see various different actions taken on the bill. I kind of recommend just looking at the major actions about the introduction of the bill, when it's been voted on, if it's been signed by the President. If you look at all actions, you get all kinds of amendments that have been considered, all kinds of procedural actions that are honestly really hard to understand what's going on, unless if you are deeply, deeply involved in this sort of congressional world. Titles shows you different names that the bill has had throughout its history. You can click on amendments to see, just different potential amendments that have been added to the bill. Co-sponsors, there were none here. Which committees it belonged in, that was also, no thank you, that was also up here. As well as related bills, which if you're researching bills on a particular topic, I think that this is a very helpful feature. And so there was another Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Act, which says identical bill, and so they decided not to consider that one and just go with this one. So all these bills basically are related to Homeland Security and appropriations. So that's a way to look at bills and different actions, resolutions in Congress. Also, under current legislation activities, you can view videos of the House of Representatives or the Senate. They do live streaming. Neither of them are in session right now because it's 4:18 p.m. in Washington, D.C. on a Friday afternoon. And what's also something that you can look at is the roll call votes. And so we can take a look. Recently voted on in the House of Representatives was to reauthorize federal support for passenger rail programs and for other purposes. So you can click on Roll 112, and you can see who voted yay or yes, and who voted nay or no, who was present and who wasn't voting. So this is in the House of Representatives, and our representative here in the 1st District of Kansas is Tim Huelskamp. So this is alphabetical. I'll look under yay for his name. I don't find it.
What is
So I'll look under nay, and there's our man. So Tim Huelskamp did not vote for funding for passenger rail programs and for other purposes. You can also view Senate roll call votes. And actually, this was an interesting one. So President Obama recently vetoed the Keystone XL pipeline, and the Senate tried to vote to override the veto. Constitutionally, you need a 2/3 majority in both the House of Representatives and the Senate in order to override a president's veto. And so we can click on the vote tally here in the Senate and see how they voted. And actually, they organize the votes in a number of ways because there's only 100 members rather than 435 to organize. And we can look at our 2 senators, and we can see that Jerry Moran and Pat Roberts both voted to override the veto. In the end, there were not enough votes, and the veto was sustained in this case. So that's just some of what you can see from congress.gov. We're also going to show you govtrack.us, which does a lot of similar things. And GovTrack is actually a private website, not created by the government. But I like the way that they're organized, and they link to a number of government documents. So, and so there's just a couple of things that I think that they do that are helpful. And one of those is that if you sign in with them, you can receive alerts based on certain types of bills, certain subjects, certain representatives, and so on. And so I'm interested in learning some information about members of Congress. So we would click on members of Congress, and it actually gives us this information right here to help us figure out who our member of Congress is. So I live in Kansas. I live at the Forsyth Library. So I'll enter in that address.
So you're the one, huh?
And yes, that's correct. I'm in Kansas's 1st District. It didn't act like it was supposed to, so I just Okay, but so these are all of our senators and our representatives for the state of Kansas, and you can click on them to get more information about them. So, and this gives you some information that you don't get on the congress.gov website. You can see their official website or their Twitter handle. Open Secrets is actually a very interesting website. This is a nonprofit website that's interested in the effect of money in politics. And so you can get information about various candidates and who their biggest donors are. And so we can take
the Center for Responsive Politics. Do you know?
What I saw about the Center for Responsive Politics is that, and there was About Us, they were a nonpartisan, independent, nonprofit organization.
Just ask us, we'll tell you.
They're not.
So, I mean, they're clearly a group that has an agenda. There's no discounting that, but they are getting public information and sharing it about various, different politicians. And you can see that with our congressman, Mr. Huelskamp, Russell Stover Candies is and actually Russell Stover and Vess Oil Corporation were the top donors to his campaign.
But then, of course, do they link them back to who owns Vess Oil and who owns Russell Stover and how many are?
Well, there was actually a disclaimer here that the organizations themselves did not donate. Rather, the money came from the organization's PACs, political action committees, their individual members or employees or owners, and those individuals' immediate families. Okay, because there was one thing that I was curious about, because I was looking to see who donated to Barack Obama's campaign. And I was surprised to see the University of California there at the top, because I thought, how could they donate? That would be a major conflict. But if it's PACs that are related to it, or employees, there's that kind of wiggle room that's been included into the law. So yeah, you notice universities, telecom, insurance companies are donated to Barack Obama's campaign. With Congressman Huelskamp, you can see some more Kansas-based companies, and there's Citizens United, and there was Koch Industries, for example. So just some interesting stuff to know that is linked to from this page, GovTrack. GovTrack also does their own analysis of where members of Congress lie on the political spectrum. And so they build an ideology score on a kind of liberal conservative spectrum based on what kinds of bills the members of Congress have sponsored or co-sponsored, as well as how many, so that, that there's the left-right, and then the sort of left-right ideology spectrum, and then what they call the leadership score. You're higher up there if you've sponsored more bills. So Congresswoman Rose, forgive me, Latinian, I'm not sure how. Latinian. She sponsors a lot of bills, co-sponsors a lot of bills, and so she gets a high leadership score. I noticed actually that somewhere in there, Boehner got a relatively low score in terms of leadership, even though he's the Speaker of the House. But then, one who's the Speaker of the House often is not sponsoring a lot of bills because their job is to be presiding, and oftentimes the Speaker won't even vote except in very close votes. But anyway, you can see, at least by GovTrack's accounting, Huelskamp is quite a conservative representative. Tells you what committees he sits on, the House Committee on Small Business as well as Veterans Affairs, what bills he's sponsored, how many votes have been missed. This actually isn't all that bad. It looks like it is, but the highest was 3% of votes between April and June of 2013. They also have report cards for individual members of Congress that tell you a little bit about what they've been doing. How good are they at being a part of bipartisan bills? How many bills have they introduced? How many have they gotten passed? There was only one that Huelskamp was able to get passed in the last Congress. It would be actually quite difficult, I think, for him to introduce something and get it passed because he and the president are ideologically very different. But this was a bill called to designate the Junction City community-based outpatient clinic located at 715 Southwind Drive, Junction City, Kansas, as the Lieutenant General Richard Day's site's community-based outpatient clinic. So kind of an honorary, the kind of thing in the House that people will generally vote for. So that's a little bit of what you can do in GovTrack. You can also, I'm going to go back now to looking up legislation. You can go to bills and resolutions. And much like with Congress.gov, you can look at major legislative activity. And so, there's a resolution supporting the goals and ideals of Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Week. It was, one that was recently introduced. Probably shouldn't have any trouble passing. Something maybe a little bit more of a hot button issue, the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act of 2015. This one actually sponsored by the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell. You can download the text here as a PDF. It shows you that the source is the Government Publishing Office. So it's if you're looking for a government document online, you'll often find that there's more than one way to get there. And like oftentimes you can get there through the Government Printing Office, the Government Publishing Office website, or through the very agency that created it. And sometimes if one doesn't work for you, the other will. Another thing that's helpful if you're doing that kind of congressional research that I've been talking about is to look up the congressional record. Now, the congressional record contains the full remarks and actions of members of Congress. This is another one where there's a lot of different ways to get to it. If you look at the Government Publishing Office website, you will find the congressional record organized by issue. So you would click on 2015, you'd click on March, you would download the entire PDF for March 4th. I actually like the Library of Congress website, which has a way that you can, it has it broken out so that you can actually find remarks of your representative or your senator, or again, search the record. So we're going to pick on Tim Huelskamp some more. See what he has said. And so his most recent statement is actually congratulating the Midland Marketing Cooperative, located in Hays, Kansas, which celebrates their 100th anniversary in business on March 5th of this year. And so that was inserted into the congressional record, and you know, it's about a local business just celebrating its 100th anniversary. And currently, the congressional record is only available digitally from 1994 forward. If you're interested in something that was written before that, you have to look it up in print, and we have a lot of that available here upstairs in the Government Documents Department. Other FDLP libraries should as well. It's one of the major items requested. So I've talked about using government documents to stay informed about congressional activity, but I also want to emphasize that government documents can help research really in almost any area that you can think of. Law was one of the first that I thought of because Dr. Brian Bennett teaches a sort of pre-law legal research class, and he brings his students, in the fall, he brings his students upstairs to basically review court cases and to look up various laws and statutes. And so we have access to a number of these volumes. This is a picture of the United States statutes at large, and the statutes at large is a collection of laws that were enacted during each congressional session. Also, there's the United States Code, which I don't believe we have the United States Code in print, but that one is freely available online. And that's the consolidated general laws of the United States, where they're organized out by subject. So if you'll remember, earlier on, I talked about federal depository library programs being part of U.S. law through Title 44 of the United States Code. Well, Title 44 is public printing and documents. So that basically deals with all of that. One thing that I need to emphasize here is the fact that Sherilyn and I are librarians and not lawyers. So if you're looking up legal information at the Forsyth Library, we cannot interpret the law, nor can we give you legal advice. We can just point you in the direction. And only a lawyer can give you legal advice, and it's expensive. Geology is another subject where you can also get a lot of good information from government documents. The United States Geological Survey is part of the Department of the Interior, and one of my favorite parts of the government documents collection is the U.S. Geological Survey's topographic maps. And the 7.5-minute series are some of the most detailed maps of the United States that are available. What I have up there, it's kind of hard to see because I had to shrink it down to fit on the slide. That's White Cloud, Kansas, in the far northeast corner of the state. And then if you want to come up here after and look, this is what the average sheet looks like. I went to the northwestern corner of the state to St. Francis. Because I know where my bread is buttered.
Same tea? You might be getting a little more butter on that.
But the so we have access to the topographic maps, which are available for lots of uses. I also brought down some from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the soil survey maps. And there's a professor, and I can't remember who it is, I believe in the geosciences department, who has his students get the actual paper maps, the physical maps from the county in which they were born. So I decided to bring down a couple examples of where Sherilyn was born. We've got the soil map of Rush County, Kansas here. And unfortunately, the county where I was born, we don't have it, so I chose a next door county. This is Wayne County, Michigan, which gives me a lot more street cred. Oakland County wasn't available. I'll also show you really quick just how you can download some of these topographic maps. So this is from the United States Geological Survey's products page, Map, Imagery, and Publications. And these are available for free. You can go to download free topo maps. And is there any place that somebody would like to see a really detailed map of? Anybody shout anything out?
I would. Wisconsin.
Okay, can you be
All
a
of
little
it.
bit more detailed than that?
Buffalo County.
Okay. Is that, where would I find Buffalo County?
West Central along Mississippi.
Tell me if I'm getting warm or cold.
You're getting there. Between La Crosse and Eau Claire.
You're in Minnesota. No, come across.
Let's see.
I'm at this angle here, but
There's Menominee.
Yeah, it's down from Nami.
Yeah.
Going down.
Go south.
gonna zoom in a little bit more.
Oh, Gillington, you're getting there.
Trempealeau.
Trempealeau, Cedar End, that's where we went to high school.
There's there's La Crosse.
Okay, it's just up from La Crosse. You're in that area.
Black River Falls.
Yeah, a little more to your left, going more toward the Mississippi River.
Lost your home.
Here we go. Well,
There
there's
it is.
Buffalo
There's
City.
Buffalo City.
So,
Buffalo, that's on the Minnesota side,
Yeah.
but that's close.
okay, well, I'm going to take a look at, sorry, it's kind of hard to, so yeah, so what you do is you mark points here, and then when you
Oh,
click
there's
on the
one city.
point, you can buy the topographic map, or you can actually just download it, which is what I'm going to do. That might take a minute, but it's worth it.
Or you could go to Pepin, which is Laura Wills-Wilder's.
Yep.
Or you can go
Little
to
cabin in
the
the
Point,
big
which
woods.
is my favorite place in Wisconsin.
Point?
Madeline Island.
Oh, of
Yeah.
course, yeah. That's way.
Also Island.
It's way far away.
I didn't get to go there when I was a kid.
Underprivileged.
Stuck in the middle of
You were near the Mustard Museum.
Yes. I have been to the Mustard Museum.
There is actually a museum to mustard in.
It is. It's really nice, especially if you like mustard.
Jeff, if you ever need
well
people to
positioned.
fill time on your download.
Yep. I do appreciate it.
Mustard Museum, it's well seasoned.
Yes.
Near the Dells.
Near the deli, you said?
Wisconsin Dells.
No, I know.
Okay.
That was a play.
I didn't figure people knew about them.
She wanted some deli mustard.
We know about the Dells.
Okay. So,
Oh,
but there's a lot that you can, I'm going to actually zoom in a little bit just on the city here, so people can see. But what's really cool about the newest topographic maps is that you can actually turn layers on and off. And one of them that you can do is images, and so that actually overlays satellite on your topographic maps.
wow.
And these are government documents because they were all created and surveyed, and the imagery was taken by government agencies, the U.S. Geological Survey. I'm sure that there's some cooperation with NASA here in order to take the satellite images.
Well, actually, I think too, you go over to South Dakota, EROS is there, which is the largest purveyor, actually, at one point. I don't know if they still are. But they did a lot of that work.
So that's some examples anyway. Geology. Government documents are also kind of a no-brainer to go to for historical research. or a natural fit is a better thing to say than a no-brainer. But there's a lot of primary documents available, and that they can give us some insight into the era that they're from. One good research tool is the United States Census. That can give you some insight into the lives of, I'll say, regular people, people who weren't the famous people that one would traditionally read about in history books. And there's actually information available down to the individual level back to the 1940 census now. I talked about the congressional record. If you're doing political history of the United States, or just even some more regular history of the United States, the congressional record in its current form goes back to 1873, and then there's formats of it before that, sometimes called the Annals of Congress, sometimes called the Debates and Proceedings in the Congress of the United States. And there's also the Congressional Serial Set, which is sometimes referred to as the crown jewel of United States government publications, which kind of contains a lot of miscellaneous material from the U.S. Congress. It includes, actually not just Congress, but it includes reports and presidential communications to Congress, treaty materials, executive department publications, and so on. One good example of that I'll pass around is the report of the Special Subcommittee on the Troubles in Kansas. And so this is from 1856, and it's related to Bleeding Kansas and the violence that took place in the eastern part of the state at that time. So the public papers of the presidents is also a popular source. Basically, when you're doing historical research in government documents, you can pretty much take your pick from any agency. They'll have some kind of material that's useful for you. I also included official history from the United States Army. This is about the invasion of Normandy, and I'm not going to pass this one around, but because I'm going to rip the map. But yeah, it has some maps of D-Day and the invasion of Normandy, and also interesting pictures and reports from that. And I'll just encourage people to come up here at the end if they want to take a look at some of this. Social sciences in general are a good fit with government documents. The statistical abstract stopped being published by the United States government in the year 2011. The 2012 statistical abstract was the last one published. And there was much wailing and gnashing of teeth among librarians, because this was a great resource, one that sort of combined, or collected rather, statistics from various agencies and had them there in a reference source that was just there and easy to access. Luckily for us, ProQuest has sort of taken up the mantle of putting out the statistical abstract, and so we just got the ProQuest statistical abstract for 2015. It's much the same. Technically not a government document anymore because it's published by ProQuest rather than by the United States Census. But what did you say?
And not free.
And well,
it's not an OER.
It's not free. That's true. Still useful. Also, there's government documents in the form of geospatial information. If you go on the United States Census website, you can find Tiger files, which is basically GIS files. Tiger is the sort of brand name there, that have shapes with statistical information in them for the different census kind of subdivisions. So, for example, census tracts, census blocks, county, state, etc. I included here just a map from the U.S. Bureau of the Census, which shows information about American Indians and Alaska Natives in the United States, reservation land, special, I forget what the Oklahoma areas were. This was sort of special areas that aren't the exact same as reservations and still have some kind of status. Had to include astronomy. National Aeronautics and Space Administration has a lot of stuff that, even if you're not, I'm not an astronomer, but it's just really cool to look at. NASA, they have a picture of the day, which I included this one back here. It's called A Dusty Galaxy Home to an Exploding Star. And this is the exploding star here on the left. This was an image taken by the Hubble Space Telescope. And as such, it's a government document. I've got a couple things by NASA up here, too. more information from Hubble. Also, a puzzle, which Gabe and Brad kindly put together for me, but of a composite satellite image taken by various satellites. Can't forget agriculture. The U.S. Department of Agriculture soil surveys, which I already showed you, are helpful, as is the USDA Census of Agriculture, which has the information about pretty much any kind of commodity that you could think of in terms of plants and livestock that is grown here in the United States. This took an image of a little report on Kansas off of the USDA webpage. I also want to mention, I've been mostly talking about the Federal Depository Library Program, of which we're a member. The Forsyth Library is also an official depository for state of Kansas documents. And so this includes the Kansas statutes annotated, which are the laws of Kansas. It includes Senate and House bills, Senate and House journals, and Kansas reports, which are basically the hearings in the state Supreme Court and state Court of Appeals. One of possible historical interest, I looked up 1961 appeal of Hickok and Smith versus the state of Kansas. Those are the murderers in the In Cold Blood story, which is famous, and you're able to find that particular court case and its transcript if you're interested. We also collect other government documents in an unofficial capacity. The Forsyth Library collects documents from other United States, from foreign governments, and also from the United Nations. I believe we recently got a report from the United Nations about human trafficking, so there's a lot that's relevant there that can be helpful for your research. So I went over a lot here. That's because our government documents take up half of the second floor and a great chunk of the space online. They encompass a vast array of materials, and there's a lot of ways that you can incorporate them into your classroom or into your research or into whatever project you happen to be doing. And so if you have any need, if you need help figuring out where to start, you can contact me, Jeff Iverson. You can also contact Sherilyn Legleiter. She also works with the government documents. Or if you want to be a little bit more self-directed in your research, you can go to fhsuguides.fhsu.edu. We currently have 3 research guides, or actually I included GIS in there because of the Tiger files, but 3 research guides that are directly related to government documents. So that'll help you get started on some research. And so that's what I have to talk about now anyway. Is there any questions that anybody has for me that I could help with? Yeah.
I just want to know what happened with, I know, and I think it was University of Michigan, but there was a proposal to digitize retrospectively a lot of the government documents. Has that gone anywhere?
I don't believe it has, and that's a question that I'll have to do a little bit more research on. But I was talking about this with Sherilyn the other day about how the congressional record, for instance, only available since 1994, and it's been only available since 1994 for a while now. Mm-hmm. And that the materials are available there. I'm not sure if it's something at the GPO, if it's stopping things from being digitized. You can sometimes find that certain universities have gone and digitized something on their own, and they're hosting this on their own website. If you just, sometimes something as simple as a Google search will find that for you. For example, some of the Annals of Congress I know were being held digitally at Cornell, and I was able to get to them.
Well, you would think that would be something, within the whole discussion of the American Authors Guild suits and everything against Google over the scanning of books, you would think that Google would see this as being a very valuable thing to partner with FDLP in order to provide to the government a scan.
Some of the large universities were a little skeptical about continuing doing this partnership, perhaps with Google.
Further.
That's how Hottie Trust was born.
Right.
As we don't want to put all of our eggs into the
right.
Google basket. So the big research libraries came together.
I guess I would see that, except rather than instead as a collaborative effort to aid the government, because I'm sure it probably is a GPO issue with funding for time and all of those types of things.
GPO doesn't have the money to do it, but I
Right.
think there was a proposal at one time from the really big
Right.
research
Right.
centers.
And government documents, at least of the United States government, are in the public domain. So you would think there wouldn't be the normal copyright
But if
issue.
they scan it,
But there's other
but
issues
if they
that-
scan it, the image is theirs.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's.
But then they also print hundreds of thousands of copies. And
No, I mean, like,
very-
if
But
we
library-
as a FDLP
Hmm.
scan something that is not already there, the image that we have scanned
is
is ours.
The libraries are pretty good about.
Yeah, sharing
for
that kind of thing.
Commercial
Right.
purposes.
Well, it's illegal to
Others are
resell
not.
government documents for commercial purposes.
Right.
That's in Title 44 USC sections 1901 to 1916.
I hate Title 44. Just saying.
But they can say they don't want to share.
I'm teaching a course in American diplomatic history, and I have
Mm.
a couple of my students out here
Mhm.
from that course, and they're doing research papers. So we're especially interested in documents that are related to that. And I know you have the Foreign Relations of the United States series upstairs.
We do.
Are you still getting the paper copies of that? And it's also available online.
We are still getting the paper copies of that. And you'd look both in, there's the Committee on Foreign Relations, and then there's also, and then there's the State Department section, and I think that, I'm trying to remember the history of it now first, but I think it used to be under Foreign Relations and then changed its name to the State Department.
Yeah,
You
it's under State Department.
Okay.
The State Department ones are under, S for, they have that catalog system, S for State Department.
Mhm.
And it's up to the mid-70s,
Yeah.
mid-1970s, so they're, about 40 years behind, but.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I can't tell you for certain. I don't know if some of this is because of classification issues.
Oh, sure,
and-
yeah.
and,
Yeah, and editing,
Mhm. You can still find, there's still the congressional committees I meant to mention earlier actually about how in SUDOCs a lot of the lettering is intuitive, so State Department being S, for example, not so for Congress, which have the letters X and Y reserved, so those are just at the very end, but this is for your information. But yes, those are, so we are still receiving the Foreign Relations in paper. It just takes a while to
Yeah.
get here.
Okay, yeah, well, that's good then. And the University of Wisconsin has digitized those. Yeah, do you know if they're adding, I imagine they would be digitizing each volume as they come out?
I don't know exactly what they're doing, but yeah, I'll look into that.
It's a good example of what we were just kicking around, though. Who's
Right.
taking on the digitization.
Right. And we have some other foreign policy things.
Mm.
So how is your research going?
I might take them upstairs and show them.
Oh, sure.
Some of the other things. So,
Since you're here, you're welcome.
Well, I mean, if you would know of any other things relating to U.S. foreign policy.
I've got some ideas. We can talk.
Okay. Yeah, my presentation.
When the camera's off. No.
It's classified.
Okay.
Well, good.
Any other questions?
For fun reading, there is a publication up there, and Sherman was just telling me it's put out by the Department of Defense. And it is for countries that the United States has diplomatic relations with. And we used to have paper copies, she says now it is electronic. And you can go to a country, and this is information for diplomats that are being assigned to different countries in the world. And it's sort of an overview of the country. And it brings in like some of the customs that you might do a faux pas with or something in that country. And very interesting reading, just fun to find out countries from that perspective.
feel free to come up and take a look at some of the stuff I have laid out here. I was trying to include just some interesting materials format-wise, so to show that government documents isn't just a bunch of reports that all look the same.
Jeff, this was a great presentation. I learned a lot and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.